Okay, so we're going to do the quick selection tool in Photoshop. The quick selection tool is probably my favorite tool to use, and it's the one I go to almost all the time when I need to select something. It is under this wand. Actually, it might look like this. Okay, so it's under here. It's the quick selection tool. So for the topic and objective, I put learn how and when to use the quick selection tool in Photoshop. You should be able to explain in writing how to use this tool. So this is what you should write or should have something similar to that in your topic and objective. For some reason, I put my name in the box. So just write your name at the top. I don't know why I did that. And I noticed that when I printed them out, I just didn't want to waste paper. The essential question is usually derived from the topic and objective. This is like the last one we did. How and when should I use the quick selection tool? The last one was the magnetic lasso tool. So it's exactly the same question, except you have a different tool. So how and when I should use the quick selection tool should be your essential question. The definition of the tool, a selection tool that functions like a paint. Okay. You can draw the tool icon, which looks like this little blobby dotted selection with a paintbrush. Okay. So that would be the tool you would select. Okay. And then we'll answer the rest of the questions while we do the lab. So how do you deselect? How do you modify the selection of the selection circle, which I'll show you in a second. And then when would you use this tool? And then to finish the lab is how would you copy it in its own layer? And we'll apply a adjustment layer to make it. Basically, what's going to happen is we're going to take this wheelbarrow and this kid, and we're going to leave it color and then make the background like a sepia tone background. So the subject pops out and the background kind of fades in. So quick selection tool is under the. You might have the magic wand. I'm not really sure. But quick selection tool. It is not with the lasso tools because you don't lasso anything with it. But here we go. So there are actually only 3. If you remember, the lasso tools have 4 different modifier buttons here: new selection, add to selection, subtract selection, and then the difference. The quick selection tool only has new, add, and subtract. I always keep mine on add. Oh, you can get one. When you select this, you have like this sort of circle here, and if you click and drag, it will kind of paint your selection, and it will try to kind of like the magnetic lasso tool, kind of try to find the edges as you go. Now, if you want to zoom in, Alt into the scroll wheel. The problem is sometimes you want to get in like right here, really small, but your brush is too big. So the way to modify your brush size, which is one of our questions, is to use the brackets. Okay, the bracket keys are right above your enter key. It's a square bracket and a curly brace, a square bracket and a curly brace. If I press the left one, it shrinks the size of my circle. If I press the right one, it increases the size of my circle. I don't think y'all can see the circle, but when you use the tool, you'll see it is actually a circle. So if I make it really small, I can go in here and paint in the smaller sections. Question is, though, I want to deselect this, right? Yeah. I don't know. I've tried like for years to try to figure it out. It's a circle with a crosshair, so it makes it bigger and smaller. It's kind of like wherever it goes, it's going to paint. You'll see it in the video if you want to watch the video. So the question is, I want to actually make this actually subtract this out because that's the background. Go up here to subtract, and then left click and subtract it. Now it's subtracted part of the fruit here, so I have to go back up to plus and paint part of the fruit in, also the finger here. So it's a lot of just going back and forth, making this smaller or bigger, depending on what you need to do. So there you go. Go back to plus, paint the wheelbarrow on. You got some grass here that you can subtract. This is actually a fruit too. It's kind of weird. People always, when they do this lab, they always forget that because it's hard to see. So we're going to subtract now because we want to get rid of some of this grassy area. Make it really, really small here. Kind of click and drag to. Of course, you can't see how small it is, but unfortunately. There you go. All right, so there you go. So, cool. Now that I have it selected, there's a couple ways to do this effect. One way is to copy, which is the way we're going to do, is going to copy it. So I'm going to say Control-C or Edit Copy, and then Control-V. What that did is put it on its own layer. Okay, so we have a layer of just what I have selected, and then the background layer here. What I want to do is click on the background layer, go up here and do a hue saturation adjustment layer. And then, like if you want it to black and white, you just drag the saturation down. You want to make it maybe kind of less, you can play around with the effects. But in this case, we're going to colorize it and give it sort of an orangish hue, the sepia hue, and then kind of drop the saturation. You can kind of play around where you want it. Like that. That looks pretty good. So that is how you do it. If I hide this top layer, you see it's the whole image. So because the hue saturation layer is on top of this background layer, it only affects the background layer. It does not affect the top layer. So kind of cool effect. Sometimes you'll see that in wedding photos in real life. They'll have like the picture of the bride, and then the red roses she has it'll just be red. Everything else will be black and white. So this is how they would do that effect. They would select out just the roses, using one of our selection tools, probably the quick selection tool, and then just copy that on its own layer and then make everything else black and white. So this is something that they would use in industry and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and answer our questions. How do you deselect? Go up to the quick toolbar. That's what this is called, the quick toolbar. And select. Subtract on selection. How do you modify the selection circle? Use the bracket key, the blank and other bracket. So this is kind of important as you use your notes to remember that this is how you actually reduce the size. There's another way to reduce the size. Let me show you that too. You can actually go up here to this drop down on the quick toolbar and change the size that way. Okay, so you can make it bigger or smaller this way. I don't usually do that because it's slower. I just like to use the brackets. So if you notice, as I type it, as I press the bracket key, the number does change it there. You can, if you don't want to use the shortcuts, you can go up there to the quick toolbar. When would you use this tool? This tool is good for almost any selections that aren't straight edged. If I was still trying to copy a building, I wouldn't use this tool. I would actually just use the polygon lasso tool, just because it's better with straight edges and it's quicker. But this tool is probably the tool that you're going to use all the time for copying or selecting, or that's the one I use. So from now on, I'm not going to tell you what tool to use to copy or to select something. You're just going to pick the tool that you want to use or that you're most comfortable with. Because you can do all selections with any of the tools. It's just some of the tools are a little better for different things. So how do you copy the selections? You just do Control or Edit menu, copy, Edit menu, paste. And then what you're going to want to do after that is add an adjustment layer. Here, add an adjustment hue saturation. Okay, so what you're going to do is, first of all, you're going to do the lab, or before you do the lab, do this summary. Use your notes to explain in full sentences how to use the selection tool. You will write that on your own in complete sentences using these notes. And then at the end of class, you'll turn that in. So you can use these notes for the actual lab. The lab itself, actually, let me go ahead and stop the